I'm Gina Bardwell, and I'm here to tell you that I'll be hosting a new show called Her Story. Hello, and welcome to Her Story. And today I've got a very special guest, and she's special because she is my very best friend, Kim Bowen Harbor from Kansas City, Kansas. Welcome. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you.
You came here to tell the world about your fabulous organization, Gift of Life. And I'd also like to talk a little bit about what your wonderful children are doing too, as a side note, you know. But please tell us a little bit about Gift of Life, how it got started, some of the journey you've been on, what you're doing now, and what your future goals are.
Well, Gift of Life started in 1998 after our youngest son, Luke, received a life-saving liver transplant, and he was 11 months old at the time when he received his transplant. He was given 2 years to live without a transplant, but he was successfully transplanted, and I'm happy to tell you that he will be 21 very soon. He is an upcoming junior in college at Ithaca College, majoring in journalism and minoring in web programming. And after that experience of having, an infant that needed a transplant, my husband Nate and I were in a position to give back to the Kansas City community that had been so good to us. Before Gift of Life started, I owned a dance studio for 23 years.
Oh my gosh, yes you did.
Yes.
It's great.
And I sold that in 2003, and my passion really shifted to organ donation, and we started that organization, and we've saved a lot of lives by doing that work.
I know that recently you have been put on a couple of committees, national committees. Could you talk about that a little bit?
I'm on a board member of United Network of Organ Sharing. We call it UNOS, and UNOS sets all policies and procedures for the 250 transplant centers in the nation. And we also look at policy and procedure regarding how organs are procured,
Right.
so that the rules are followed accordingly. And then I'm also nationally on the Pediatric Transplant Committee as well.
What do you think that you have learned now that you didn't know when you started on one of the committees?
Well, the world of transplant is very layered and very complicated.
Yes.
And there's a lot of parameters to it. There's a lot of programs that are great and transplant centers that do a really good job, and then there's some that kind of struggle. And so I'm learning really how the whole network of the transplant community works.
I bet there's some politics involved too.
Yes, there is. Yes, ma'am, there is.
A lot of politics.
And I'm not much of a politician.
Yeah. Oh no, you're good. You're good.
Not really.
I've known you a million years. You're good. So talk about your fabulous fundraiser that you do that is, I think, is so different from what most people do. Most people have a gala.
Yeah, no.
Where people wear big dresses and there's a big rubber chicken dinner and everybody's, cheering about some cause that they know very little about, and they just sort of throw money at the situation. Talk about your big fundraiser that you do annually.
So our annual fundraiser is called Go See Do. And we started Go See Do about 14 years ago, and it is now 44% of our annual budget we raise from that event. So Go See Do is where someone comes to the event, they select a behind-the-scenes tour of something in the city. They go on their tour for an hour, and then they all congregate for an auction and heavy appetizers. And it's an afternoon event on a Saturday afternoon. With the first Go See Do, I think we had 90 people, and we netted $10,000. We had 3 tours. This last year we had 14 tours. We had 425 people, and
Wow.
we netted close to about 145,000.
Oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
really, really grown. You know, I can remember the first time I attended the very first event for the Gift of Life. And, you know, you started in your home, right? And so tell how you transitioned from there to where you are now.
So we officed out of our home for 6 years. So for 6 years, I had my dance studio, and then I also did Gift of Life. So I did 2 jobs for 6 years, and then that was too much. So I sold my business, and then we transitioned out of our home because we were growing, and my kids were very young at that time. And then we moved into office space in 2004, hired an executive director. So we have 3 full-time employees, 2 part-time employees, and 150 volunteers.
My gosh, and all of the work that you all do is sort of like the little engine, not that could, but the little
Yeah.
engine that does
Yes.
and that can.
Yes.
And it's really, really amazing. Talk about you have a mentoring program too. That's really an important component of Gift of Life. Talk about that.
The mentoring program, what we do is we mentor patients as they wait for a transplant, and we match them up with someone that's been on that journey. And I actually was a mentor for someone here in New York City. And they came to Kansas City to receive a transplant. That was 7 years ago. I was their mentor, and I just had lunch with them the day before yesterday while I was in town.
That was Barb, right?
Barb,
Oh,
and
yes.
he's doing, Gil, Barb's husband, is doing fantastic. And we have mentored almost 450 families at this time.
Isn't that something? I mean, it's real. When you first started, what did you know? Were you aware of anything, or were you a little blind going in, or did you learn along the way? Talk about that.
Yeah, yes, and yes. The reason Gift of Life started is because no one in our community had ever talked to my husband and I about organ donation. And so we felt there was a need and a gap. So we knew there was very little education about it, and I've always been a teacher. So we started a high school outreach program. We had high school students come to our home on Sunday afternoons, and that program has now developed into, we will educate almost 30,000 high school students coming up this following school year. So we didn't really know what we were doing, and I think in a way that was better.
Yeah.
Because we could create and understand it and fall down and stand back up and do all that on our own. And so it's been a wonderful experience, even though it was a hard experience to get us there.
I would think that it would really be challenging because Luke has a brother, Cole.
Yes.
And I would think it would be challenging for a young child to sort of be there and watch his brother go through all of that. How did you manage and balance all of that?
Well, I don't think I did it very well at the beginning, but we got better as we went. But Luke is my son who received the transplant. He has a brother 16 months older, Cole. And Cole struggled with all of that because it was really hard. We were doing the best we could. My husband works full time. I was working 2 jobs. So it was very, very busy. And Cole has turned out to be an outstanding young man.
Oh,
he
yeah,
just graduated from Elon University in North Carolina. He's riding a motorcycle now around the United States
Woo-woo.
and studying communities
Yeah.
and what makes them kind and compassionate.
Yes.
And he is just a fine young man. And
He's
I
stellar.
think all the experiences that we have, that you've had, that they have, truly make us who we are. And I think the hardest experience we have, personally for me, makes you a better person.
I agree with you. You know, I think that I really,
And you've
really.
been there through all those times, all those up and down
I have,
times.
but you know, even when you explain the story again, and you know, Luke who came here just 2 weeks ago for that audition, and he stayed with me for a week. I mean, he brought so much spirit and life just wherever he goes to whomever he meets, and people just gravitate to him. He is such a wonderful spirit. And Cole, you know, I did a whole report on contemplative learning and included Cole as the focal point because he is so, I think he's one of these children. He's grown up to be a man who really thinks about people. He thinks about consequences of and interactions with people. He thinks about kindness. He thinks about giving back. And he is so interested in the world and people in the world. And for a young person, that's very, very different, you know. And to be able to take this trip all around the United States on the motorcycle and to be able to meet people, and his whole theme, acts of kindness, right?
Kindness in action.
Kindness in action and acts of kindness, meeting
Yes.
people around the world, around the United States, I think is fantastic.
I think it's important, if you have an opportunity, and you can, and that comes in different shapes and forms, to raise curious children.
Yes.
We have raised very curious children, so therefore they do very interesting things.
They do.
And we've been blessed that we have been able to give them some of those opportunities.
Well, I'm just so happy that you came. You know, actually, you're here visiting me, I know, and it has been a pure joy, pure fun, and you have always just been one of the brightest spirits in my life. And I want you to know that. This isn't the first time you've heard that. But I'm just happy that you're here. I'm happy for your family, and your organization, Gift of Life, is out there. You're doing your thing, and that is her story, and she is amazing. And I'm telling you, look up Gift of Life, Kansas City, Missouri, and Kansas City, Kansas, Greater Kansas City area. And what's the website?
It's Gift of Life. No, that's terrible. It's giftdonor.org.
Giftdonor.org.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. That's her story. We'll see you later. Thank you so much for joining me on Her Story here at Soul City. I'm going to be interviewing lots of wonderful women with fantastic stories whose lives are compelling, and I hope that you join me. And if you have a story, I would love to hear it. Tune in to soulcity.me, and I'll see you then.